HOA Karen installed a fence through my orchard. She had no idea I'm a federal land surveyor. Have you ever walked onto your own land and found a bright white fence slicing right through the middle of your orchard like someone just claimed your home with a ruler and a nail gun? Because that's what happened to me on a Thursday morning. I was holding a bag of feed, planning to check on the beehives before the weather turned, when I spotted the glare of something new down by the old apple trees. I squinted. Sunlight caught the paint. Then my stomach dropped. It was a 6-foot vinyl fence, dead center through my east field. Clean line, new posts, a little laminated HOA logo zip-tied to one of the panels. And standing next to it, clipboard in hand, was Karen. "Excuse me?" I called out, not bothering to hide the tension in my voice. "What the hell is this?" She turned like she'd been waiting for me. "Oh good, you're finally here." Finally here? I was on my own land. "This fence is being installed as a property division in accordance with Whispering Pines Phase 2 boundary expansion," she announced, like she was giving some kind of TED Talk. I stared at her. "What expansion? This orchard's been in my family since 1937. She gave me that look, that condescending, head-tilted, tight-lipped smirk I'd seen on HOAs across the state during conflict assessments. The look that says you're just an obstacle. Well, there's been a reinterpretation of the original lot lines. This parcel is now considered part of the shared perimeter greenbelt. I'm just making sure the fence gets up before the HOA vote on Friday. You'll be compensated if you submit a formal appeal." A reinterpretation of surveyed, registered federal land? I took a deep breath. I wasn't just a landowner. I was a federal land surveyor for the Department of the Interior. I knew every inch of my title lines. Hell, I drew some of the foundational topographical maps used in this county. If Karen wanted to play with boundary lines, she just picked a fight with the wrong guy. "I didn't receive any notice," I said, calm but firm. "Oh, we mailed it," she chirped. "But the HOA doesn't need individual consent for improvements related to the visual harmony of the neighborhood." My jaw clenched. "You're not even my HOA. "Well," she smiled, "you will be. Soon." That was the moment I knew this wasn't a mistake. This was a land grab. And it wasn't just about aesthetics, it was about control. Karen had been gunning for expansion for months. She tried to annex the farms on the ridge under the guise of emergency easement preparedness. Her real goal? Tax leverage and development control. My orchard was prime land. She wanted it under her thumb, and this fence was step one. I told her I was going to remove it. She laughed. "If you touch it," she said, "I'll report you for destruction of HOA property and trespassing." We already registered this section with the county. I stared at her, stunned. She registered it? That meant she falsified documents. Boundary registration requires a certified map, signed and notarized. There was no way she could have gotten one legally unless someone helped her fake it. I turned on my heel and called my assistant at the bureau. "Nina," I said, "I need you to pull any filings made in the last 6 weeks under Whispering Pines HOA and flag anything involving Parcel 112D. 30 minutes later, I had it in hand. Karen had submitted a boundary map, with my name digitally signed on it. I sat in my truck and stared at the screen. My heart wasn't pounding. It was cold, steady, focused. She'd committed federal forgery. And now, she'd given me all the rope I needed to pull the whole house of cards down. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table, the lights off, computer glowing, flipping between county GIS maps, the federal land registry, and my grandfather's original deed scans. I cross-checked everything. Lot lines, corner markers, registered pins. Every measurement lined up to the centimeter. Karen had forged a federal signature to steal land she didn't own and tried to pass it off like I wouldn't notice. Like I was just some aging farmer with no power. Big mistake. By morning, I had the folder printed, annotated, and backed up on 3 drives. I called in a favor with a friend over at the U.S. Department of Agriculture who'd seen the HOA wars heating up all across rural counties like ours. "I think you've got something bigger than zoning abuse here," she said after reading through it. "This isn't an accident. She altered legal boundaries and used forged data. That puts you in federal jurisdiction. Let me loop in Interior and the State Surveyor General. Good. Let them come. But I didn't wait. At 9:03 a.m., I drove to Whispering Pines HOA headquarters, a glossy little converted cottage across from the golf course that Karen had turned into her personal kingdom. Fake plaques on the door, security camera pointed straight at the sidewalk, and a gold-lettered sign that read, Whispering Pines Board of Standards and Beautification. Beautification, my ass. I walked in with my badge around my neck and two plainclothes land-use compliance officers behind me. Karen was inside with 3 contractors, huddled around a blueprint like it was a battle plan. "Oh, for God's sake," she groaned when she saw me. "This again." The compliance officer beside me stepped forward. "Ma'am, we have reason to believe you've submitted falsified boundary documents and unlawfully erected a structure on private, federally protected land." Karen blinked. "What? That's absurd. That parcel was marked as open perimeter. I had the maps." "We'd like to see the originals," I said. She crossed her arms. "You can't just barge in here and accuse me. Do you even have jurisdiction?" I reached into my folder and laid the signed document on the table. Then another. Then the forged one with my name digitally printed with a font mismatch so obvious it practically screamed fraud. Karen's face paled. "I don't know where that came from," she muttered. "You submitted it," the other officer said, "digitally using your HOA credentials. At 1:22 a.m. 2 Mondays ago. I was asleep at that time," she barked, backing up. "Someone must have hacked my account. Or maybe the system glitched. You know how these things go." I stayed quiet. Let her talk herself deeper. "Ma'am," the compliance officer said sternly, "we've also identified 3 other properties in the expansion plan whose original owners are now contesting their boundaries, and 2 of them reported identical fence installations under your direction." Karen's jaw twitched. That was the twist. This wasn't just about me. She'd done this before, quietly, to people without power, people without GPS records and satellite overlays and federal clearances. I was just the first one with a badge and the nerve to push back. And now, the state was watching. The officer continued, "We're issuing a cease and desist on all Whispering Pines development activity effective immediately. Any continuation will be treated as obstruction." Karen looked at me, finally realizing this wasn't going to go away with a smug smile or another fake notice. "You don't know who you're dealing with," she hissed. I leaned in, voice low. "You're dealing with someone who measures mountains for a living. You think you can redraw my land with a printer and a clipboard?" I turned and walked out. Later that day, while the county survey team dismantled the illegal fence, I received a call from Luis, one of the orchard hands. "Boss, you might want to come down here." I drove back down to the east field. Karen was there, standing in the mud, crying. Not loud or messy, silent, shoulders shaking. Her car parked crooked under the pine. No clipboard, no sunglasses, just a woman stripped of her arrogance. Watching the line she tried to move get remeasured and erased by hands she couldn't control. I approached slowly. "You shouldn't be here." She didn't look up. "This was supposed to be mine. This orchard. Know this power. The board. The expansion. I fought for years to get Whispering Pines certified for development. Do you know how many men told me I was crazy? How many banks turned me down?" She looked at me then, eyes red. "I thought if I could just make it work, they'd see. They'd respect me. I didn't mean to not like this." There was a pause. I nodded, then said quietly, "You crossed the line. Literally and legally." She chuckled once, bitter and hoarse. "Story of my life." I didn't feel pity, but I felt something. The kind of weight you carry when you win a war that shouldn't have needed to be fought. "You can leave before they cuff you," I said. "You've got about 5 minutes before county legal arrives." She nodded, wiped her face, and left without another word. And as her tires kicked up gravel down the road, I stood at the old oak tree at the edge of the orchard and looked at the rusted marker my grandfather had hammered in nearly 90 years ago. Still there, still right, Sometimes truth doesn't shout. It waits. Prompt for next climax image. A photograph, long-angle camera, in a natural, dramatic style. Seen at the edge of an orchard under overcast skies. Karen, mid-40s, stands alone in mud beside the broken remains of a white fence, head bowed, one hand wiping her face. The protagonist, wearing a field vest and hat, stands several yards away, near a rusty old boundary marker hammered into a stump. In the background, county trucks and survey crews remove the illegal fence posts. Leaning against the marker, a wooden board with hand-painted words. Some lines can't be moved. The investigation moved faster than I expected. Within a week, the State Surveyor General's office confirmed what we already knew. Karen had not only falsified my digital signature, she used altered topographical maps in 3 separate filings, all aimed at expanding HOA jurisdiction over non-member land. What started as petty overreach had grown into a pattern of deceit. Fraud, intimidation, unauthorized land occupation. And now it was all coming apart. The county attorney's office issued a formal statement. We have initiated legal proceedings against a former HOA executive for multiple violations, including forged land documentation, abuse of civic authority, and attempted unlawful annexation of federal property. For the first time in my life, I watched neighbors who used to roll their eyes or stay quiet finally speak out. The orchard wasn't just land, it was proof that Karen had crossed a sacred line. In our town, property isn't just property. It's history, identity, bloodline. And now, her empire was crumbling. First, the contractors who installed the fence sued her for falsifying permitting paperwork. Then, a group of homeowners who'd been fined under her leadership filed a class action claim for emotional distress and illegal code enforcement. HOA insurance wouldn't cover her. Then came the board vote. Whispering Pines HOA, once a smug clique of compliance junkies, voted 43-2 to dissolve their current charter and operate under a new leadership council with full transparency requirements. They even passed what they called the Karen Clause, banning any board member with active civil or criminal complaints from holding power. Karen's name? Removed from every record. Her photo? Taken down from the HOA clubhouse wall. Her gate pass? Deactivated. She became a ghost. But the biggest shock came one morning when I got a knock on my workshop door. It was her son. Mid-20s. Soft voice. Hands tucked in his jacket like he didn't know what to do with them. I just wanted to say thank you, he said. I blinked. For what? For not destroying her. You could have gone public. You could have ruined her name worse than it already is. But you didn't. I didn't answer. He stepped closer. She's not okay. Not really. Never has been. But what happened here, it made her look in the mirror. For the first time in my life, she actually apologized to me. For everything. That hit me in a strange place. Some mix of exhaustion and relief. Like maybe, somewhere buried deep under the ego and the false power, there had been a person who wanted to do right and just got twisted chasing control. He left a mason jar of honey from his aunt's farm and told me the family was selling the house. That was the last I ever heard from them. And the orchard? It bloomed early the following spring. The bees were back. The soil was strong. We planted new wildflower rows along the edge where the fence had been torn down, and kids from the local school came for field trips. We even put up a hand-carved sign at the entrance. Not for tourists, not for defiance, just for truth. This land is measured in roots, not rules. One evening, an old neighbor stopped by, Gus, retired firefighter. He used to avoid HOA meetings like the plague. You did good, he said, patting the fence post. People like her, they count on the rest of us being too tired to fight. But you didn't fold. I almost did, I admitted. Part of me wanted to just yank the fence out and be done with it. Nah, he smiled. Fences can be fixed. But you proved something bigger. You showed us that the truth can outlast lies, even fancy ones. We stood there a while, watching the sun dip behind the trees. The land felt quiet again. Not because it had been reclaimed, but because it had been respected. And in a world full of Karens with clipboards and fake authority, that might be the most important line of all. Final prompt for symbolic closure image. A photograph, long-angle camera, in a soft, golden hour rural style. Scene at the edge of the orchard, now peaceful. The protagonist, older, calm, leans against a weathered fence post holding a surveyor's rod. Children in the background gather apples under wildflower trees planted where the illegal fence once stood. A hand-carved wooden sign hangs on the gate, with soft letters reading, "Truth holds the line." Weeks turned into months. The orchard healed, the land settled, and life slowly slid back into its quiet rhythm. But the effects of what Karen tried to do lingered not like a wound, but like a scar that reminds you where the blade hit. The fence was gone, but the memory of it, still etched into the soil. I was sitting on my porch one early summer evening, boots off, a mug of black coffee in hand, when I heard the familiar crunch of gravel from the driveway. It wasn't a deputy. It wasn't a neighbor. It was the new HOA president. Her name was Talia, mid-50s, former teacher, sharp eyes that saw through people instead of just looking at them. She walked up carrying a small clipboard and a wrapped basket. "Don't worry," she smiled. "No violation notices today." "Appreciate that," I said, tipping my mug. She sat on the porch step and looked out over the orchard. "I wanted to say thank you," she began. "Not just for what you exposed, but for how you exposed it. You didn't torch the place. You didn't turn it into a circus. You just stood your ground." I nodded. "Didn't feel that calm at the time." She laughed. "Justice never does. It's loud when it shows up, but quiet when it stays." We talked a while. About community, land, how fragile trust becomes when it's misused. She told me the HOA was rewriting its charter with checks, limits, and public oversight. The days of backdoor fines and fraudulent votes were over. "I wish more people remembered," she said. "That leadership isn't about control. It's about protection, about stewardship." Before she left, she handed me a sealed envelope. Inside was a formal apology. Not from Karen that bridge was ashes, but from the new HOA leadership. It admitted wrongdoing, acknowledged the damage, and committed to working alongside, not against those living on the land around them. And at the bottom, a hand-signed note. "If we build fences again, they'll be only to protect the trees, not power." I folded it, slipped it into the drawer beside my grandfather's original land deed. 2 generations, separated by time but united by the same fight. To keep what's yours from being swallowed by someone else's ambition. That night, as the wind danced through the orchard and the barn owl called from the treeline, I realized something. Karen hadn't just built a fence. She built a story about how entitlement, when left unchecked, becomes oppression. How silence, when mistaken for weakness, becomes fuel for justice. And how one line, drawn in the wrong place, can echo across a whole community until someone finally says enough. In the end, Karen left. The board reformed. The land remained. And me? I stayed right where I was. Same house, same trees, same soil under my boots. But now, when people pass by the gate, they stop to read the new sign carved into the arch. Boundaries are sacred, not suggestions. A reminder, a warning, a truth. And if the next Karen ever comes knocking, she'd better bring more than a clipboard. She'd better bring a map. Because this time we all know how to read the lines.